In today's episode, Rae and I are going to be talking about the power that art journaling has in our lives and how being open to explore new ideas, techniques, and supplies is going to be able to grow your creative practice. And another magical bonus is using challenges. So Rae shares with us how being able to participate in challenges is a way to keep that creative spark going. There are so many nuggets in this episode. And so I'm going to tell you, grab a notebook because you are going to be wanting to take notes all the way through. So let's get into it.
Gotta get messy and show the world you growing as an artist. And you're free to be yourself. You got a dream, you need to start it. Stick together. Get messy says you're formally invited to a community where you can find people that spark the feel of excitement. Too many art supplies, not enough time. No, it's tougher, so you must find a way to feel some connection. We got a lot of people with the same kind, a great mind. We here for you, a platform so we can hear your views. Time's yours, forget chores. I know you bored of them same rules.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Get Messy podcast episode. Today, I'm going to be chatting to Rae, and I am so excited to have her here with me today. So, Rae, thank you so much for saying yes to joining me for the podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, for those that are listening, could you maybe give us an introduction to who you are?
Sure. My name is Rae Missigman. I've been a part of the art world for a long time on my little back burner corner of the world here. And I love sharing. I've found that the platform where we're finding ourselves these days on Instagram is a great place to kind of gather all these new people to the mixed media world, which is, was so new to me at one time that finding every day that there's someone new to it is encouraging, because there's times we think we're kind of falling off the bandwagon of it. It gets so hectic. And then someone is new and inspired and excited. And so I really like that.
Oh, I love that. Do you want to tell us a bit about your journey and how you got into art journaling?
So some of the people that have been around a long time know it sort of stems from a not so great place, but many years ago, we had a tragedy in the family and I lost a child, and I clearly was devastated. And I wasn't an artist then. I didn't make art. I wasn't a hobbyist. And I was having a really hard time coping. And I thought, I'll start journaling. I'll start keeping a diary and I'll write words down. And I did start that way, but there were days I was still really upset and really angry and really sad. And I just started making these marks on the page, I think, so that I wasn't venting to my family. And I literally found myself one day just making mark after mark, like a hash mark, and counting. And I was like, I haven't felt this calm in such a long time. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of stemmed from there. I did simple marks, counting that, was kind of crazy, I guess, but it's what worked for me. And then as time rolled forward, it evolved into other things, it evolved into what eventually became art or mixed media. And so it's kind of crazy how our mind or our body or whatever takes over in a time of need. And it manifests itself in different ways, whether it's art or reading or whatever it is, so yeah.
And I think it's quite powerful that something so beautiful has come from tragedy and hurt, right? Right. I think it's a testimony to the power that art can have in our lives.
Truly, I think that the mantra that art heals is kind of scoffed at a little and overused, and, people wink at it a bit, but I know a lot of people that that's true for. And in a way, I'll still find myself all these years later making those marks, and my mind instinctively goes to counting them. And, that's when I start having these memories and I'm like, look how far I've come and look at how I can do this without breaking down, or look at how I can look back on the memories and enjoy them rather than dreading them, kind of thing, and that is part of art.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm a firm believer in the power that art has to heal us.
Mhm.
I can't state enough how much I use that as a tool to be able to just cope with life and to deal with loss and
Mhm.
tragedy and, just hard feelings that life
Right.
sort of bumps up against us.
Mhm.
So I know that I wouldn't be able to go through half the things I go through just
Right.
without that practice, that comfort, as you were saying, right? The comfort that it provides.
Right. And I know in
Mm,
the beginning, as it morphed into art, I was so afraid that, I'm kind of, for all the social media and all that we have to be out there, I'm very much a introverted person in my personal life. And so I was like, I don't want to share any of this, but there's value to what's happening here. And so that's when I realized there was a segue into mixed media. I could get down what I needed to, but I could also cover it up and only share with the world what I wanted to. And I think that's what I try to convey to people that reach out to me about it behind the scenes, is that you can still get it out there, out of yourself and onto the paper any way that feels good. It doesn't mean you have to share it, but it doesn't mean you don't have to share it either.
mm,
There's ways that, collage and mixed media and paint, that we can do that. And I know what's buried there, even if nobody else does.
yeah. And I
Mhm.
think it's also really special that you have got this insight, right? So that you can help and guide other people that are coming to art for similar reasons and are maybe feeling uncertain and not quite sure how to find the balance between expressing themselves and getting this out and sharing. And so it's really, it's quite magical that you are there to be able to guide them and help them in discovering how they can work through these difficult things.
Well, I appreciate that. And I always start by telling people, I'm not a specialist on tragedy. I'm a hot mess
Mm,
when it comes to that, even all these years later. And no one is pretending to know what anyone else is going through, because each thing is different. There's just this pathway through it that, might work for all of us, especially if you're inclined to, art, which a lot of these people that we're finding together on social media are. So I
mm,
think the art community has grown into something extremely powerful. That's either good or bad. I don't know. But it has, and we're seeing this big lean into that, how it heals in so many ways and it's therapeutic. And I love that about it, because when I started doing it, it wasn't that type of welcoming community.
wow. It's quite strange because I feel I'm quite new to
Mhm.
the art journaling community. I started my journey sort of I started creating art at the end of 2018, but I only discovered art journaling sort of halfway through 2019. So I feel like I'm still quite a baby when it comes to art journaling. So it's quite interesting to not have the backstories of a lot
Mhm.
of people and how art journaling, as a community looked a few years ago. So yeah, it's quite interesting to be able to hear how it has morphed and evolved over time.
Right. And we see that, I think, too, in the actual art. I
Mm,
look back, or people will ask me to share things from that time, and I'll look at that art and I literally want to cringe, because there's evolution there too. And we're so tempted, I'm so tempted to ditch all of that because it's not reflective of who I am. It's not reflective of my style anymore. And I'm like, but there's a story there that's important. If I look at the art and it seems ugly to me, that was an ugly time. So it makes sense that there's evolution in the style and the art itself as well. And I'm always very clear with people about that. I said, I don't get rid of the old art because that's a big part of the story.
Oh, that's quite interesting because I'm the opposite. I
Mhm.
am 180 degrees the opposite. I can't. I find it so terrible to look back on my old work. It makes me physically uncomfortable.
Right, I know, and that's why I say even like this book I wrote a while back, and there was this whole big ordeal with right at the time it was supposed to come out, the book company went belly up, and so, it got published anyway, but so many things happened at the time that there was so much delay that by the time it came out, I didn't even want it published. I'm like, "That's not what I'm creating anymore. That's not reflective of who I am as an artist." But I thought, you know what? It's all part of the evolution. Do I cringe? 100%. I don't share them unless I'm asked, but it's there and it is part, of how we grow as artists and people through art journaling. I think.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think if you're not cringing at past work, then maybe you haven't pushed the boundaries far enough yet. I don't know, but it's so
Either that or
uncomfortable.
you're an art rock star, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You've got nerves of steel, maybe.
Right, right.
So yeah, I throw my old journals away. I don't keep them.
Wow. That is something, I'll tell you what. I will say there's a few that have not made the move with me a few times, and I think those looking back, I don't know if I would have still made that decision now, and, they're not, like, on display or anything like that, but for the most part, I do have all of the old ones. But I'm with you on the fact that I'm like, "Oh," when I look at it. I think we're all our own worst critics, so we
Yes.
can't be the only two.
Yeah, I agree. We
Mhm.
cannot possibly be
No.
the only two who look back and think, "Oh my goodness." And you know what's so funny is like you were sharing it on social
Yeah.
media and so proud of it because it was the best thing you had ever done.
Now you're like, "I hope no one scrolls that far back." Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that is funny. That is really funny. But I think it's also reassuring in knowing that you are growing and you are evolving as an artist.
Mhm. And that
So
you're
I
not
think
the only
it's
one, that there's other
yes.
people out there that, I mean, certainly across the pond, you and I are talking and we're in cahoots with it, so has to be other people that are feeling and thinking the same thing, hiding them under
Yeah.
the bed or something.
So I've got an interesting question, and that would
Mhm,
be for someone who's listening and maybe gotten to a point where they did look back
mhm.
and thought, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what I was thinking. Clearly this isn't for me because I am not an artist," and then maybe stopped creating or started to censor how they were creating a lot more. Would you have got, or have you got any advice for people that are maybe feeling disheartened by having looked back?
I mean, just from my own experience, like you were talking, you toss your journals. So I have another little secret. I cover mine up. So some are there in their raw form. A few have gone missing over the years, but I most recently, when I was digging through, and this is only because the little grands that run around here, they love to look at those books. And the really horrible ones are the ones they like because they were the most chaotic. There was no rhyme or reason to any of it. I was literally still just getting everything out. And so it was just color and marks. And um, I said, there's value to them, but I would like to be able to bring them out. And so for me, I think what I would say is looking back, don't be afraid to cover some of that up. Maybe there's
Mm.
something of value on the page you want to keep and you paint in around that. Or maybe you want to cover it with a flap that only you can see if you flip it up, or paint right over it. What the heck? You know what's underneath it. Kind of like with all my weirdo marks and counting. But I would say that looking back, it's normal to feel, in my opinion, from my experience, it's normal to feel that way looking back. But
Mm.
I wouldn't give up. I go through ups and downs still all these years later. I can't tell you how many times I told my friend, this is my last year. I'm done. I'm out. I'm over it. And then a new idea pops in my head when I walk in Hobby Lobby, and here I am home doing something like a crazy person. So, so I'd say to maybe revisit it, and maybe salvage something on the page if you can, or cover it all up and just start over there, and you'll feel like you tried again. I don't know.
Mm. Yeah. And I think also it's important to remind yourself that it's a progression, right? So everybody starts there. Everybody starts with pages that they don't like, or creating and not really knowing what they're doing. And so not knowing what their creative style is or how they like to create. We all start there in that messy beginning. And so you're not unique. And we've all got those pages where we look back and we're like, I was definitely a beginner. So don't stop, right? I think if you stop creating because of that, then you've let that voice in your head win, and you're not
Right,
going to get any better if you don't just keep going, as you were saying, like
right.
cover it up or turn it into something else,
Mm.
or throw it away and say, that's not me anymore, that I have developed a different style, or I know what colors I like using now, or whatever the case may be.
Right. Because it still
Mm.
helped you get from there to where you are now, no matter what you do with it
Exactly.
in the middle. And I
Mm.
mean, I, for one, still struggle. One day I think I'm this kind of style, and the next day I'm this. I'm all over the board all the time. And I think out of all the things that stress me out as an artist is that, like not being able to claim one thing that I'm really, really good at, or that I think it's just reflective of me. But
Mm.
then by the time I'm done for the day, I'm like, I'm okay. It's okay. I can be all over the board and be all those things because, I get to say,
Mm.
what reflection I am in art. So I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
all over the place.
I think this is another idea that I have, that, or maybe I'm a little delusional, and I just have these stories to comfort myself. But I always say to people that the things that you are drawn to
Mhm.
stay the same, right? So it might be a different theme, a different style, a different supply, but the common thread is you. So almost like a brain, what do they call those things where you
Like a
do
mind
the
map.
a mind map?
Yes.
Yes. So you the center, and so even if you're going off and doing threads and watercolors and collage and acrylic, I feel that because you're the central part that's created all these things,
Mhm.
you are the voice that comes through in no matter, in whatever style or technique it is that you are creating in. And so that common thread ties it all together
That's so
because your
well.
hand is in it.
Yes, and
Yeah.
the thing that clicked is you said that we're always drawn to the same thing. All these years later, I still go straight for the same types of things that I
Mhm.
collect or gather or want in my home. It's just how they manifest themselves in the art is
Yeah.
different. I love that. The
Mm.
mind map. Yeah, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
we're the brain. Mhm.
Yay.
Good.
Right?
You're not delusional. That's great.
Yay. Yeah, so that's how I've always just viewed it, because I think a lot of us are what I've sort of come to associate with being multi-passionate. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot.
Mhm.
And so I think that, yeah, that's just how I've sort of been able to put it together for myself, is those things are all part of our personalities. And so there isn't a need to have to, I think a lot of people feel you have to have sort of
Right.
like niche down, right? You've got to have a specific focus or a specific style or a specific supply that you use. But I just think that, yeah, I mean, there's so much of us to express and to want to sort of dive into. So why limit yourself?
Right. It's like we're
Mm.
jacks of all trades and master of none. And I like that
Yes.
because it gives me permission to try everything. You know, my
Mm.
daughter's on the couch this week crocheting all of her gifts for her fellow teachers and stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try crocheting. I'm like, what am I doing? I don't need one more thing to keep up with or try. But, you know, it's smoothing. I'm doing, I'm going along. I'm like, oh, I
Mm.
could do this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
love
think
that.
it's helpful to us along the same lines of healing is to answer those calls. You know, if we're
Mm.
curious about it and we try it, that's how we know. You know, half the time we'll leave it in the dust, and you know maybe we'll find that. But I like the fact
Mm.
that we don't have to be so niche that we can, you know, enjoy all of those different avenues of art. It's why we're mixed
Absolutely.
media artists, and then we can include them all into all the projects.
Oh, that is so true. Yes. And the other thing that I was thinking as you were talking was that by exploring all the different things, we have an opportunity to combine maybe things that have excited us in the past and then bring the new thing in a different way. And that could sort of take you down a whole new path that you didn't even see coming because
Oh,
you allowed yourself to have that space to just try different things.
absolutely. I can give you a good example of that recently around
Mhm.
here in the crazy house is I used to love to scrapbook. That was probably the first thing I did as an artist. And I
Mm.
say that because I could never really follow the rules of the classes and stuff I went to or the groups I went to. I was always like, "Ooh, can I sew on this or can I staple this?" Or and they're like, "No, that is not the layout we're doing." I'm like, "But I really want to." So my first experience with mixed media was, you know, layering and putting dimension and stuff onto those pages of those photos of the kids and stuff. And it kind of went by the wayside for years as they got older. And now all of a sudden, the last couple years, I'm incorporating my photos
Mm.
back into my journal pages, you know, and they're not just magazine clippings, but they're photos that I'm taking of my life and things that are going on and putting them in there. And I love that, you know, different
Mm.
format, different style of photography, the whole 9 yards, but getting back to those roots again. And you know, part of I loved taking the photos, I loved collecting them, I like having a record of what's going on every day, and I think it's fun to, like you said, bring in the old to the new and mix them
Mm.
together.
Oh, I love that idea. And I love that it's gone right back to the beginning again, right? That's so exciting.
Yep. Me too.
Mm. So, for someone who's been at this for a while, is there any way that you would, or any suggestions that you would give them on keeping that creative spark alive?
I actually had to have this talk with myself pretty recently because, again, I think we all go through the little
Mm.
slumps, and I do blame the you know influx of everything there is for us to see out there. You know, we're already
Mm.
our own worst critics, and then we're looking around and we're looking around and we're like, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming because there's so much out there to take in and so much good stuff, such good art and creative people. And then we start to question what we're doing, you know.
Mm.
um,
Mm.
and so somehow I was looking for something for a customer or something, and I had to scroll way back through my own social media feed. And I'm like, oh, wow, there's some good stuff back here, some little Easter eggs of stuff I forgot about. And then I started looking back at old journals, not that old, not the cringy ones, but recent old. And I was starting to get really inspired by things that I had done before that I had forgotten all about. And I think for experienced people, that would be the tidbit I'd say is don't forget about the
Mm.
stuff you've done in the past. You've gotten this far because you liked what you were doing. And so it's easy and tempting to move on to the next big thing. We all do it, we all try it. But I
Mm.
think it helps to kind of revisit our own work with fresh eyes, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
pick out, you know, what you, again, maybe the old of what we've done and add it into the new of what we've learned.
Yeah, being inspired by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
radical idea in these
Isn't it?
times.
And it's a great way to, for lack of a better word, stay authentic. You know, if you
Yes.
are, especially if you lean towards wanting to have a style or a niche, and if that's important to you, then that would be a great way to stay on track that way, is to, you know,
Mm.
keep looking at what you're doing and see. Because I think even in the worst pages, we find one thing we like, whether it's a color or a mark or a word or something. So, yeah, I think there's value in waiting a while before you look at it. You know, don't look at what you did yesterday, but maybe a couple months ago or something.
Yeah.
Just not too
Yeah. And
far.
when you start feeling the cringe, then you know it's
Yes,
time to stop.
right, exactly. Then you fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Mhm,
But I think it's also interesting when you can look back, even if it is just a few months or a year back, and see how you were trying to sort ideas out and trying to find the direction. And
mhm,
then you can see how your work develops in a certain way. So it's fascinating to go back and see the origins of
mhm.
things that you're currently loving.
Yeah, because almost with certainty, I'd say you'd find little pieces of what you're doing now
Mm,
that were, you know, starting to be evident there, you know. I love that.
yeah, absolutely. And it's also quite interesting that those are oftentimes the pages that were frustrating you or that you were not happy with. And I
Mhm,
think it's because you're trying to figure things out, right? You're trying to understand. There's something that you know inside of you that you're trying to express or explore, and you're not quite sure how yet. So it's those beginning stages that feel a little awkward.
yeah,
So when I think looking back on those pages, they hold the beauty because you can see their origin stories.
little seeds that have been planted. And I
Yes.
don't know about you, but I have so many times, um, for lack of like, oh, I don't have anything else, I'll post this. And I'm like, this is literally the worst thing I've ever posted. This is going to get no likes, but it'll show I showed up. You know, the stinking algorithm, la, la, la. And it'll be the one thing that people gravitate to. I'm like, what is happening here? It's literally the worst thing I ever did. And everybody is commenting on it or liking it or has questions about it. So maybe that sort of is part of what you're saying. And there was a nugget of something there that someone else with fresh eyes can see that I was overlooking in the
Mm.
moment, you know? It's happened multiple times and I'm like, I am so confused right now. I really didn't think this would happen.
Uh, I've heard that before from multiple people saying, it's a post that they've put so much effort into and they're sure that this is the one that everybody's going to love. And it's like crickets. Nobody's
No,
commenting, nobody's liking it. And then other times you'd like, as you say, almost like a throwaway post where you just
right.
think, oh, I'm just going to slap this down, not even like go into a big explanation and write a
Nothing.
paragraph on it.
And then it's got like 1 million likes or something, you know? I mean, who knows what's going on out there? But I do think maybe if what we're saying is true and there's things we're overlooking in the heat of the moment or the self
Mm.
pressure or the working so hard to make it perfect that we're overlooking something that really is there already and everyone else can see it but us, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Mm,
often say to people, especially people that are sort of focused at that stage in trying to find their voice or find a
mhm.
style, I can see it. When
Yes.
oftentimes I'll have people saying, "Oh, I don't have a style," and I say to them, "But I can see one of your spreads without even having to look at your name." It's just so people definitely have a different lens. We've got a more critical lens, I think, that we
Mhm.
look at our own work through.
I agree, because you
Mm.
can just be zipping through and you'll see something and know exactly who did it. So
Mm.
that's very true.
Yeah. Okay, so I have got a question that I love asking people, and I love like trying to work out ahead of time what their answer is going to be. So
Mhm.
I'm going to ask you, if you could choose only one color to work with, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. Um, would you have guessed pink?
No, I would have said green.
Because green is what I want to say, but I think I would choose pink, and that's recent because I
Mm.
accidentally spilled some pink paint recently, and I don't like to waste anything, and I'm like, okay, we
Mm.
can make some marks on paper and it's collage paper, whatever. And so I started mixing it with all these other colors on my palette and had this amazing, beautiful palette of everything from greens to browns to pinks to salmons. And I was like, wow, this is a really marvelous color that I didn't expect this from.
Ooh. Oh,
Yes.
yes, yes, yes.
I
Love.
think now today I would pick pink. I think if I had to have one monochromatic color forever, it would be green for sure. But an
Mm.
interesting color as an artist to use and manipulate, I would have to say pink.
Oh, I love that. Yes,
Hmm.
pink. Pink is a very special color, but green too. Green, I love all the colors. Let's just put it out there. All the colors are
Hmm.
special, but green and pink are two colors where finding the right shade can be very difficult.
It can.
Oh,
And it's like you're on a mission to always
yes.
find, and it's in our brain, but it's never anywhere where we can get it.
Yes, exactly. Like trying to mix the perfect green or the
Right.
perfect pink is so difficult.
Yep, I agree. Well, it's fun mixing with pink with other colors, so you have to
Yeah.
give it a try.
Oh, I love it. And when you said that you missed it, I thought it's only in the mixed media world where we would like knock over a bottle of ink or something and start scrambling for papers so that we could just have all sorts of interesting painted papers and think, okay, well,
Exactly.
I can't waste it. Like
Oh,
slap on everything I can find.
exactly. And that is not the first time that's happened to me. But yes, it is. It's one of those things that my mind just immediately, it doesn't go for the paper towels. It goes for the brushes and the papers. And let's see what we can salvage.
Yep. It's so funny. Yeah. But I love that that is just how we all are, right? That common thread
Mhm.
again. It's just, I think other people would probably look at us and think we're completely crazy. But
Right.
I love that other art journalists are going, that is absolutely what I would do.
Yes. Right.
100% I would be getting out anything to soak up the paint and make papers while I'm busy.
And we know the value in what's laying there in that puddle. We just
Mm.
can see that far ahead that, oh, this is the perfect collage circle, or this is that, or yeah, we can't waste. That's our favorite color. We can't waste that. Hmm.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love
So I love that you've chosen pink. I think that's fantastic. I think pink would is a close if you could compare the
it.
numbers,
Mhm.
pink would be a close second to the greens
Yes.
in your color palette.
Hmm.
So makes
Definitely.
sense.
Hmm.
I love that.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
fantastic. So have you got any projects that you're currently working on that are keeping you creatively inspired?
So right now, I jumped in this year to a little free challenge, the Art Journal Advent, and I don't typically create this time of year, so I was like, oh, I don't know if I should do it, but I did, and I'm so happy. I think we talked a little before we were live that typically I would find every excuse not to step into the studio in December. I'm just super busy. I want to be present in the moment and all the other things that are going on. And so sneaking in here for a few minutes every morning and getting those pages done, I'm like, I love this. And I'm finding, and maybe I always find that with something like a challenge, and this did happen for Messy May too, which it was the first time I had done that. And oh, I loved it so much. But I find that with a challenge, we're not so absorbed with the outcome as we
Mm.
are with other projects, whether it be for a class or, something else. And so there's this freedom in what we create. And I don't know why, but it always just turns out so much better. Like the sample page before you make a class. And then during the class, you're like, what is that? I don't know what happened. Right, the pressure is on, and now I can't get it right. But so I've been just sneaking in here for a few minutes every morning and doing it. And I made sure to work small because I knew it was doable time-wise and stuff. And I've just loved it. I've absolutely loved it because at its heart, it's just art journaling. You can interpolate it any way you want. It stems from a single word. I mean, I have had so much fun with it. But the bonus is so many people have been attracted to the book that I made it in. And I'm like, oh, I just made this little book to do this in. And I've had these great questions and comments and feedback on it. So maybe that'll morph into something in the new year. But I've had a lot of fun with it. And I have not bailed like I tend to do sometimes when things get hectic or crazy. I've had to play catch up a couple times, and then a couple days I worked ahead, but I've stayed true to the project, and I've had the best time with it. And there's has to be a correlation there, because the same thing most recently happened with Messy May. And I was like, this is free to do it or not do it. No one's looking, it doesn't matter. And it was just so freeing. I really enjoyed that, no one's looking kind of creating.
Mm. Oh, yeah. So I'm quite interested to dig into that a bit further.
Mm-hmm.
I think it ties back to that openness of allowing yourself to just explore and not knowing where it's going. And it sounds like that's what you're getting from these challenges, is that it's not the pressure of having to create a full spread that has a theme or a final end result or whatever, but you just have the freedom to just play.
Right. And also with these, I always go into them saying, okay, I may or may not get it done. I may or may not stay on track. And I definitely don't have to share it because no one knows I'm doing it. And sometimes things that we find are our favorite or best work to share comes out of that because we've completely let go of that pressure. And I mean, so I've had a lot of fun. Maybe I just need to always pretend like I'm not doing anything for real. It'll all be good.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, but it's true though, right? As you were saying, when the pressure's on and you've got to perform because people are watching, whether it's a YouTube video or a live stream or whatever it is, it's like your brain just short wires or something. I don't know.
Well, I think too that, and maybe there's enough people in this community that know it's like doing math. It's not always easy to vocalize what you're doing and still do it in the manner it's supposed to be done. We do our best because we train ourselves, but doing it when you're in your own head is a little different than trying to make sure it's perfect and the lighting's right and my hand's not here and the shadows are great and, all of this stuff too. And then still talk it and teach it, So yeah, it's a little bit different experience.
Yeah. I love that you put it back to math, because someone that I interviewed, I can't think who it was, someone that I interviewed a few weeks ago, the words that I wrote down as we were talking, she said, this is not a math problem.
We must all be afraid of math as artists, because I know I am. That's funny.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting because it is, right? There's a lot of other stuff, the talking and you expressing yourself, and there's a lot involved. So yeah, can't always work that way. But I must say though, I know that you're saying the pressure's off because people are not expecting you to be sharing because they don't know you're doing the challenge. But I think there's also a lot to be said for sharing to keep yourself on track.
Yes, that for sure is the thing, because I've noticed for me, and part of it might be the OCD. I like things a certain way, that if I get emboldened and share one because it's good, I'm like, oh crap, now I got to share them all. Or because then they're asking, they like that, and then they want to know where's the rest. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I do always approach it like I don't have to. And then I'm like, if I skip a day, I skip a day. Or I have a dirty little secret. Like if I don't think it's good, I'll only stick it in my story because I know it'll be gone in 24 hours. My daughter's like,
That's clever.
"Easy." I'm like, that's smart. Oh,
Oh, that is clever. And yeah,
yeah.
that could be a nice way to then still feel that there's accountability for
Mhm.
sharing, right? So that helps you to stay on track and do every
Right,
day, but there's not the pressure of having to,
right,
as you say, have it as part of your permanent feed.
right.
Just pop it in a story. I love that idea.
And the flip side of the coin is, we're talking about being okay with what we've done and,
Mm,
the evolution and stuff. And so I do think it's important to share things that are less than perfect or not perfect. That's such a wrong word,
mm,
but what we're okay with, what we
mm,
find acceptable to share. And that's different for each person. But I think there is value for especially beginners in sharing things that we don't love too and being honest about that.
mm,
And I do try to, I'll say, hey, I didn't love this, but, I liked this. Or at the end of the day, I learned this. And that's,
mm.
important.
Yes, yeah, that openness and the vulnerability in sharing and saying, I don't love it. And oftentimes those are the ones that resonate, right? Someone else might come back and say, I love it.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but yeah, being able to say maybe not the best thing or not, maybe not my
Mhm,
favorite thing that I've
mhm.
created, but these are the parts that I can
Yeah,
appreciate. I think
exactly.
that is encouraging for people that are also new to sharing online is it might not be something that you love, but there is something that you can,
Right.
there could be small parts of it that you can
Mhm.
love.
Even if you
Yeah.
learned one thing, that you could
Mm,
share, or you stumbled across one new color, or you tested a new tool and you fell in love with it. There is
yeah.
something that came out of it that was worth doing it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So, do you do a lot of reflection on the work that you're creating? Do you spend time looking at it and thinking, sort of taking it apart, analyzing it, thinking what the next steps are forward in other pieces of art that you might create?
Um, I would say yes and no. No, in that I don't do it after it's created. I tend to just flip the page and move on. But I am pretty um, critical slash a note taker while I'm doing it. Not for everything or
Mm,
every project, but so if I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, I love how that turned out. I'm definitely going to forget it. So I write it down. And so I have this little notebook I keep by me. And I do the same thing. Like if I try a new tool, I love it, I write it down. Or a mixed a color, I write it down. And I have these little notebooks filled with that stuff. And, they've turned out to be kind of like journals themselves, but they're valuable because I can go back. Finding
mm,
it again is a whole nother story, but it's there. So but yeah, so not necessarily after the work do I do that, but definitely
mm.
during. Mhm.
Oh, I love the idea of doing it during the work because it
Mhm.
means that you are very aware of being present in the moment. You're not thinking ahead to once this is done. You're in the moment. You're like, oh, I love this color. Let me document it. Or I'm loving this tool. Let me document it. I think that is just magical.
And I have to tell people when I'm teaching that, there's pros and cons to that because I will plan a class or I'll plan a project. But by that, I mean, I outline it and I take some notes. I mean, I'm very much a create as I go person and it's kind of evolving even as I'm doing it. And the pros are what you said, you get all this magic out of it. The cons are sometimes you should have planned a little better. That's not going to fit where you thought it would, or this didn't work out quite the way you thought it would. But there's always a way, because we don't believe in mistakes, to alter it or layer over or do something. And so I have learned to just not plan better, maybe, but slow down a little in that,
Mm,
rush to be kind of, because it's like once I get going, it's kind of like I just want to keep going. And sometimes I'm just real quick with the glue or something. That's
mm.
not always
Yeah,
good, you know.
I understand that. Yes,
Yeah.
I think I fall prey to that one too.
I'm like, oh, done.
Yeah, yeah.
But there
Sometimes I just,
mistakes one makes, we want people to know that's what's, it happens to everybody.
yeah. And sometimes, not every time, but
Mhm,
sometimes the pages where you made the mistake, right? And so you
mhm,
have to spend some time trying to figure it out,
mhm,
come up with a solution to get it to where, where you're happy with it.
mhm,
Those can sometimes be the best pages because you've had to sort of step out of your comfort zone
mhm,
unexpectedly and come up with new solutions or a new creative idea that you
mhm.
didn't plan for, but that spontaneity also adds a layer of interest, I think.
I love that. That is so true, and I have found that more than one time to be the case in having to alter or rethink what I did because you
Mm,
don't want to give up what's there usually. And it's a journal page. At the end of the day, what does it matter? But if that's our hobby, if that's where our release and our healing is, then it is important that we take it to the finish line. And so I think that, like you said, we have found some things that are worth taking note of in those fix-its.
yeah. Oh, and I love this idea that you sort of just touched on it now, but the reason for the creating, right? Because it's something that you're doing to make yourself feel better. I
Mhm.
think it's important that you, as you say, see it through to the end. Don't give up halfway, right?
Right.
It sometimes pages get to a stage where they're just really messy and you don't know where to go to, and you think that you've like it's beyond saving. But sometimes just stepping away, whether it's for a day or a week, sometimes it might even need to be longer, but coming back and getting that page to a point where you feel I'm happy with it now. It might not be perfect, but I'm
Mhm.
happy with it, I think is really important for your creative spirit.
Oh, I agree, and I think the fresh eyes things is so spot on. I mean, if you could hold off from tearing it out or completely covering it up, even for a day and coming back, I have found that there's 99% of the time, something salvageable there, or an idea clicks at 3 a.m. and you're like, oh, I need to write that down because I'm going to do that tomorrow. Or you start covering it up and you're like, oh, but this is worth saving. And then you have all the magic starts all over again because it's a completely new process and it just keeps snowballing. But I think fresh eyes is a really big one all the time for all the situations.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes. We are having so many good tips. I hope everybody's got a notebook there and they're just taking notes because we have shared some beautiful little bits of creative wisdom, if I say so myself.
Right. Oh, yes. And you have.
Oh. So, Ray, would you say that for somebody who is maybe just listening to this and thinking it sounds exciting, would you have any bits of wisdom of where to start your creative journey or your sort of stepping into art journaling? What are some things that people can do to make that leap?
I mean, for me, it was, simply putting pen to paper, and that can look different for everybody. Make a mark, make a line, draw something. I mean, I um I think that starting is the big one. I think journaling is such a protective way to start because you can literally close the book and no one has to see it.
Mm,
And I think that we have so many opportunities in the mixed media world to cover it up or change or alter it or layer it that we don't have to have the fear that we did back when, we could only draw or sketch or, there we were I mean,
mm,
I feel like as artists when I came into it, you were limited. You should have been a niche. You should choose one and you should stick in your lane. And, that was a little scary at first, unless you're bucking the system like me at the scrapbooking store. But you can just start with something, if you gravitate, I would say, to a certain medium, maybe just start there, and put marks on paper or sketch something and then color in around it. I mean, I love when I get stumped to do coloring book style stuff. Like I'll just doodle
mm,
something and then color in around it. And I just feel like the non thinking of those easy tasks can sometimes unwind the mind enough that you are suddenly thinking of all these other good ideas, you know? It's like you
Mm.
almost have to turn your brain off for a little bit with something mind numbing.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. Those are fantastic ideas. Um, and I put here that as mixed media artists, we don't have to be naked on the page.
Right. I love it.
Because when you were saying, like sketching originally, you had to be
Right,
sketching or you had to be an
right,
artist, but now you get to cover it up. You get to put paint on it. You get to put collage
right,
pieces on it. You get to put a flap on it. So
right.
we don't need to be naked anymore.
You don't have to worry about being naked. Exactly right. I love that. You could close the book and no one would know.
Yes, yeah. And I think that it makes it so much more accessible to people, which is why it's become such a big art form that people are being drawn to, is because it's got the safety to be able to express yourself and still create something that you're proud of.
Because I think when I came into it, if it would have been, canvas only option, I don't know that I would have stepped into it like I did, because that
Mm,
seems so out there and, all eyes on. And with a book, you can just close it and tuck it in somewhere or hide it in a drawer. And I mean, no one ever had to know if you didn't want them to. And I
mm,
think there was especially because when I started, there wasn't Instagram and stuff. That was a huge safety net for me, especially at that time in my life, because what I was putting on paper wasn't very visually pleasing. And so, but it
mm,
felt good, and it almost felt wrong to say it felt good because it wasn't beautiful,
mm,
And so I think we've come a long way with that. But there's a reason that the book form for art and journaling has stuck and has really rooted itself in the art community. And I think that's because there, like you said, there is safety in being able to, hide what's in there.
mm. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for chatting to me, Rae. It has
Mm.
been such a fantastic conversation, and I
I
can't thank you enough for joining me.
I loved it. I had a great time, and thank you for having me.